In this presentation, I will be covering the ethical philosophies that are accepted by the Catholic Church. And I guess before we get started, let's outline what's on the menu. So I split this presentation up into 3 key questions to satisfy your hunger for knowledge. For the appetizer course, I will be explaining what is ethics, and followed by the main course of what is morality. Then to top it off for dessert, the dish is what does the Church say. So let's get this started, shall we? So before we get into this stuff, we need to get into this stuff. What are ethics? Well, to put it this way, ethics is like morality, but not like morality. Don't get me wrong though, both are ways of thinking that discern right from wrong. It's just that they differ from the source they are gathered from. Ethics comes more from an external source, with an example something being like the art of peace, in which it teaches you to always be on the defense and never on the offense. As for morality, we'll get into that in just a bit. So now that we have an understanding of ethics, let's go over the 3 ethical theories that the Church accepts. The first ethical theory that we will cover is Teleological Ethics, followed by Deontological Ethics, and then finally an ethics of the faith. The very first is Teleological Ethics. Teleological ethics was developed by Aristotle and goes on to state that the highest form of good can be achieved via 2 things, and that is helping the community or being responsible for another soul in need, and then always being the pursuit of knowledge. With this, Aristotle describes that these 2 things are our fundamental duties as human beings, as it is a desirable end to be achieved. Take for example a man who needs help escaping a burning building. Helping that man, as we are responsible for that soul in need, is a reflection of the ultimate good, as we just saved their life. Or what about always studying or discovering something new? This allows us to work on ourselves and potentially solve problems of the stage, which would in turn benefit the majority of the people. So with that all being said, we can finally take Aristotle's word for once. Now let's clear our slate and move on to Deontological Ethics. Deontological Ethics was developed by Immanuel Kant and is very similar to Teleological Ethics, except this time Immanuel Kant explains something internal that Aristotle did not, and that is intention. Both Aristotle and Kant believe that the highest form of achieving good is through doing your duty to the community. However, where they differ is the motive of the person behind the action. For example, in Teleological Ethics, if you save someone from a burning building and not have the slightest care, congratulations, you still achieved the highest form of good. But however, in Deontological Ethics, this will not be viewed as the ultimate form of good. It is only viewed as the ultimate form of good if you go back and save the man from the burning building with care. Other differences with that arise with Teleological Ethics is that Deontological Ethics believes in a God figure to be present, as well that people are an end, not a means. In conjunction, Deontological Ethics does not call us to be responsible for the other, but rather just do what is beneficial for the majority. And then last but not least, we move on to the ethics of the faith. In Levinus' Ethics of the Faith, Levinus calls us to be responsible for another once we have experienced their faith. In other words, what Levinus is referring to is that once we put ourselves into another person's shoes, or feel whatever they are feeling, we now have a responsibility towards that other person. Now, it is no coincidence that Immanuel Kant and Immanuel Levinus share the same name, as both their ethical theories share a couple of similar characteristics. For example, they both need a God figure to be present, and a good intention to achieve the ultimate good. Teacher. Yes? I don't understand what is so important about ethics. Why should I care? We will see each of our actions that we do affects everything around us, and it is our choice whether or not to make our surroundings for the better or for the worse. Take for example that burning building analogy that I had used a while back. All ethical theories that I explained all lead to the person being saved. But imagine if there was another option, and that is not to save the man. A world without ethics, or perhaps the world as a whole accepting a different kind of ethics, that leads to the man not being saved. The entire world would be in disarray, as it fails to provide the choice that would achieve the ultimate good as it dictates in the Bible. You see, these ethical theories were accepted by the Church as they are somewhat parallel to the Gospel, and practicing these would be enacting the teachings of the Bible, which is to serve one another and the Lord our God. This would be explained a little bit more on the 3rd course, but for now let's elaborate a little bit more on morality. Now, I mentioned earlier there was a distinct difference between ethics and morality, but never really defined what morality was. Morality, on the contrary to ethics, is guided through an individual's own experiences. For example, anything such as an event or societal influence could shape what is considered to be moral. Now this stems from something called moral agency, which is what most legal systems are based off of today. A moral agency, it dictates that a moral agent is someone who can tell right from wrong with the knowledge that he or she knows what he or she is doing. Call it being held accountable if you would like. With this, it can be said that morals sort of help us discern what is right and wrong by referring to past experiences as sort of a guide to make the right choice in a given situation, which relates to the concept of conceptual framework of human action, which allows us to take on sort of a consequentialist view regarding decisions being made. Now with the Church, the Catechism dictates a lot of what is to be accepted from the realms of ethics and morals. Most of these ideas of acceptance are found within the Catechism in section 1755 to 1756, which refers to ethics, and then 1951 to 1954, which refers to morals. To further elaborate, section 1755 to 1756 refer to the three ethical theories that have been discussed earlier. Like I had previously said, the three ethical theories that are accepted by the Church, each tailored to reaching the highest form of good possible. But even though their intentions are to do that, they are still missing a fundamental piece, and that is the means through which it is achieved. Take for example, acting on a solution to help the poor, which involves stealing or killing the rich to obtain money. Although this would lead to achieving the ultimate form of good according to the three ethical theories, it violates the teachings of the Church, and this is where the Catechism comes in. The Catechism tells us that a morally good act is only considered morally good when no evil end or means corrupts the action. As an extract from the source says, one may not do evil so that good may result from it. Now with that being said, the next section, 1951 to 1954, talks about moral law, in which a Catholic is to be governed by. In this particular text, it states that a man uses its freedom of choice to be able to decide what is morally good and morally wrong, which is quite similar to the concept of a moral agent. But where this goes a little bit more into detail is that this section describes that a moral law is a direct result of the Creator's wisdom being passed down onto man, and that only man can wield such a trait. Now with that being said, this actually ties into a key concept regarding the decision of what is right and wrong, and that is through conscience. Conscience in the teaching of the Church is viewed as the voice of God that gives us advice towards a particular situation. For example, when you see a homeless person by the street, you may not say something physically, but your conscience is telling you to help the homeless person. And by that example, it is not rather yourself telling you these things, but rather it is God who is commanding you to help the homeless person in need. Because this is the case, the more loyal an individual is to his or her own conscience, the more they are governed by moral law and conduct. Which finally leads to the conclusion of the presentation that we must be both ethical and moral, as morals are direct orders from God and ethics are a set of rules that coincide with the teachings of the Church regarding life in general. Teacher. Yes? Does choice have any impact on morals or ethics whatsoever? Well, I'm glad you asked that. Each choice we make is a result of the morals or ethics that we choose to side with, as they are both a guideline on how to act towards a certain scenario. Most of these times, these two can work with one another, but sometimes they are in complete conflict. Take for example a lawyer who is defending someone who is guilty of murder. The morals of the lawyer may say that the plaintiff should receive capital punishment, but ethics of the lawyer may say that he or she must defend the plaintiff. When it gets to this, it is up to you or either your conscience to make up the decision of the right choice. And on that note, that is the end of the presentation.